Go for record. So, what is the today concept? File handling with help of the Python programming language. Mm. So, guys, file handling will take two or three sessions. So instead of taking today, would we can we just go for the exception handling? Okay, the reason is that tomorrow we don't have any session, right? So why should we have a gap? Okay, let's finish the topic of the exception handling, and on Friday and Saturday and Sunday we will look for the file handling concepts. Is it okay? Let's go for the create the Python file. Wait for 1 minute. I will be back in two. Will be back again. Okay, so let's continue our session with the concept of the exception handling. Exception handling, right? So, oh, just need to write it, date as well. Okay. So 11/09/2022 exception handling, right? So if you want to be understood the exception handling, okay, so first we should understood what exactly the exception. So what exactly the exception? Exception means it's a very simple thing. The program can be terminated in the middle of the execution. The program execution. The program execution can be terminated. Okay, the program execution can be terminated. Program execution can be terminated in the middle of the program execution terminated in the middle. Okay, that we are calling it say exception. So why? What is the reason you might be a program has been terminated in the middle? There are only one reason. Logically your program is correct, okay, I mean syntactically your program is correct, okay. By the time of running, okay, by the time of execution, we might be get some errors. Those errors we are calling it say runtime errors, okay. Because of this particular runtime errors, a program can be terminated, okay. Because of this one, my program can be terminated, okay. For example, your program, it may have the syntax errors, right? Syntax errors in the sense it is system structurally. So when you're not following the proper structure, okay, when you're not following the proper structure, we might be getting error that we're calling it's a syntax error. So syntax errors which are done by the programmer, okay, I mean programmer misreading that particular program, okay. So these errors, programmer made these errors, okay. So and meanwhile the programmer only need to be solve this particular errors actually, okay. So when the programmer doesn't have the proper structural knowledge on the coding, then you might be getting this kind of errors. So I hope so syntax errors we can able to solve it by the time of execution only, or before execution only we can able to solve it, okay. But runtime errors in the sense, in program there is no errors, there are no syntax errors, there is no syntax errors, there are no syntax errors, then we can move into the execution, right? Then we can run, right? So by the time of running, we can run the program, right? So by the time of running of that particular program, we might be getting errors. While runtime, we will get some errors, okay. So because of the runtime errors only, your program can be stopped in the middle. Because of runtime errors, okay, because of the runtime errors, we will get exceptions, okay. Why we are getting an exception? Why we are getting an exception? Tell me please, why we are getting an exception?
Because
Then runtime
I guess
Yes, when you're running a program, we will get some errors. Because of that errors, your program can be terminated. So when the program is terminated in the middle, then we are calling it say exception, okay. So this exception you might be getting in a different ways. I will show you each and every example. Before showing the runtime errors, I just want to show you the syntax errors. Okay. So I would like to go for some structure. I want to create some function. Okay. I couldn't mention that colon symbol. I couldn't mentioning the colon symbol. So what happens? Will you be get the error or not? So we can run this particular program or we can call that particular function. So before before a function calling, we can print I am a I am programmer. So this is the statement. It has to be executed at the first line. Okay, first line we don't have any error, right? See, but unfortunately the program it might having the syntax error. When we have a syntax error, then this is the code it won't be run at. When we have a syntax error, the program it won't have executed. Okay, let me consider I don't have any kind of syntax error. When we don't have a syntax error, the program can be executed without any errors. So here you made some syntax error, or you made we missed some structure of the function definition, so that we are getting this syntax error. But now we solve that one, and so that we are getting output or not. So here's this is the syntax why we are getting, because of the programmer forgot to mention the colon. So programmer only modify this particular code or not? Yes or no? So when we have a syntax error, make sure that we need to go for rewrite your code. Okay, make sure that your program it doesn't have any kind of syntax error. That's fine. My program it doesn't have any syntax error, but I may get the some runtime errors. Runtime errors in the sense, by the name of execution of the program, we will get this error. I just want to be print the name of the var. This is the var is not yet defining. So if you're not defining the name, then if you want to use the name, then you will get the name error. Okay, see, but here we are executed the two statements. The first statement is executed, and this is the function definition. It won't executed, and we call the function so that it's started execution from the first third line. Third line it doesn't have any error, so that we got the hello. But in the fourth line we have a name error. So where is not defining, but even though we try to be printed, so that's an error. So that this is the runtime error. Name error is the runtime error. Clear? This is the one example. This is the one example of the runtime error. Now I would like to go for import the one library. So that library which is not available, the library which is not available, even though you're trying to be importing it. See, here we are getting error name is model not found error. This is the runtime error. Okay, because of the runtime error, after execution of these two statements, my program has been terminated. That's why we're calling it say exception. And I want to show you some more example. I want to be converts the complex number into the I want to be convert complex number into the integer. So that kind of error we're calling it say type error. Okay, type error also it's a runtime error. For example, I want to be convert into the a float, but the float which is in a string, that particular string I want to be convert into the integer. So then we are getting the value error. Okay, and for example, I just want to show you a lot of errors, lot of runtime errors. For example, you are trying to be division with a zero, then it could be zero division error. Okay, for example, um, you're defining one variable, that's my string, I want to be use some name. Okay, var dot some function name I want to use it, method name I want to use it, but this is the method is not there, then we are getting the attribute error. So here attribute error is also it's a runtime error. So attribute error, zero zero division error, and value error, type error, name error. Okay, and module not found error. Okay, and these are all examples of the runtime error. So like this We have lot many errors are there, lot many errors we have it. Okay, so when we are getting this kind of runtime error, so you should handle it. If you're not handled properly, then your program can be terminated in the middle, your client cannot be satisfied. Okay, so we should handle this errors, we should handle this exceptions, that we are calling it say exception handling. What does mean that exception handling? I hope you understood the exception and why we are getting an exception, and so different kind of runtime errors we seen, right? Now we would like to go for handling this exception. Okay, so handling an exception in the sense, even though, even your program, even your program may have runtime error, I don't want to stop the program, I mean I don't want to be terminate the program, I don't want to terminate it, I don't want to terminate the program. For that one, we can use the exception handling. For the exception handling, we are going to be using the two keywords. There are two keywords. One is the try keyword and followed by the except keyword. This is the two keywords are help you to handling the exception. The syntax of the using of try and except blocks are, it's a very simple thing. We can use the try block and we can write the logic here. Okay, so program logic defined here, define here. Okay, the program logic we can define here. And for example, if the program it might having any kind of logical error, then you might be getting the runtime error, right? When we are getting the runtime error, the exception block can be executed. So this is the block can be executed when when we get the exception, when we get the exception from try block. So the try block which always checking an exception, or it always checking the runtime. When we are getting the runtime, the program can be stopped in the try block and it will be go for executing the except block. This is the syntax for the try and except. Can you please note this example? Try and the exception syntax. Guys, is it done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's do a small example. Let's do a small example. Example means nothing else, guys. Let's handle the previous program. Okay. So you might be getting the, okay, so attribute error. So when we are getting attribute error, this is the logic, right? This is the logic. I want to be defined. I want to be defining inside of the try block. You just defining this entire thing inside of the try block. So the try block will always, the try block will be executed successfully when we don't have any kind of runtime error, when you're not trigger the any kind of runtime error. Okay, so unfortunately you might getting the runtime error. Okay, that time it will go for executing the exception block. You got an exception, got the exception. Okay, see, your program is not raising any kind of a, your program is not stopped in the middle. Okay, here this is the block is not, this is the block cannot be executed, only this statement is executed and this one is executed when you're calling this particular function from this particular var dot fun. This is the fun is not defining, that could be the attribute error. When we are getting attribute error, that could be the runtime error. When you are getting the runtime error, the execution can be stops here and it will be go for executing the exception block. So this is the way we are handling the exception. Okay, same example with a different exception, different runtimes, we can try it actually. Okay, so now I don't have any kind of variable. I want to be I want to be print the var, but var is not defining, right? So that we are getting the exception. Okay, and for example, I want to be I want to import the library, but the library or the package which is not there. So that time also exception has been executed. So this is the way for each and every exception. So the default exception block can be executed. But my intention is that if I'm getting the attribute error, I would like to go for executing some special block. If I am getting the module not found error, then I would like to go for executing the some other block. Okay. And for example, if you're getting the value error, then I have to go for service the, or I have to go for execute the some specific block. That situation, we have the multiple exception block we can defining. Before that one, you just go for executing this particular program, or else we just note this example. Note this example, guys.
Okay, sir.
Done? If it is done, please let me know. Okay, now my intention is that if I'm getting the multiple exception, I just need to be handle it. Okay, within the same program. So this situation, if you're getting any exception, this is the exception block was executed, right? But if I'm getting the attribute error, I have to go for executing the attribute error handler. So that we just mention that attribute error. Okay, so the name error you just mention it. Okay, just error name you just mention it. So whatever you want to be do that specific task, when you're getting the attribute error, we have to be performing, or we need to be write that particular logic over here. Okay, attribute error. Okay, for example, if I go for the accept, and now for example, if you want to handling the name error, then you just mention the name error. So if you want to be handling the name error exception, we just need to be write our own except block and give the name is name error, then it will be go for handling the name error exception. If I want to be go for handling the value error, then we have to mentioning the value error exception or value error name, then it will handling the this kind of error. Okay, so this is the way you can able to go for mention the, so what error you want to be executed. For example, this is model not found error, right? I'm not defining the any at any error name or exception name, so that the default exception has been executed. Okay, so for example, same program, but this time I may get the attribute error. So I have the variable var, and we are not you defining some text. Okay, I want to be print function, I want to be call the function is fun, but this is the fun is not defining. Okay, for this particular var, so that we are getting the attribute error. Okay, so this is attribute error, right? So attribute error, we mention the name or we mention the exception block, so that the corresponding block can be executed. Okay, and now for example, I would like to go for the name error. So the name you're not defining, but even though you're trying to be print that particular name, so then it could be the name error. When we are getting the name error, then it will be go for handling the name error exception. The execution can be stopped here, and it will be go to the exception block. So this is the way the corresponding exception block can be executed when we are getting that specific error. Okay, clear? Note this example. Sorry. Mutum. I hope you guys have done this particular program, right? Now we have two more blocks are there, which is the else block. One is the else block. This is the else block. Also we can write after the except, but this can be executed when we don't have an exception. Whenever the try block has been executed successfully, then only the else can be executed. Otherwise, else is not executed. Very simple thing. You can comment this one. I don't have any kind of exception, so that the try block was executed successfully, so else block is executed. Okay, we have one more block is there, which is the finally is the block it not depending on exception or runtime error. Even you are getting an exception, even you are not getting any exception, this is the finally can be executed, not depending on exception. Okay, let's try. I don't have any exception, right? So that the finally block has been executed. Let me try. I got an exception, then also the finally block has been executed. In two situations, even exception situation or no exception situation, these two times the block has been executed. Note this program, final program. Done. So this is the small program, guys. Actually, for data science guys, which is not needed, who are working on the web development or web backend developers, those guys are needed. Okay, but anyway, note this particular program. Once it is done, please let me know. We will connect in a stats class. Bye. Take care. Come to stats class.